Hello everyone, today we have another Commander deck to review. And today it is Nekusar the Mind Razor. Now a friend of mine wanted to play Commander and he said, hey, can I borrow a deck from you? And since I have so many cards, I said, sure, make a deck list and I'll build it. So he came up with this Nekusar deck and he won the tournament. Yes, it's a pretty good deck. Yeah, I played it myself a couple of times for fun. Yeah, it's a really powerful deck. So let's see what Nekusar himself does. It's a zombie wizard, 2/4 for 5 mana in the colors of blue, black and red. And at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. And whenever an opponent draws a card, Nekusar the Mind Razor deals 1 damage to that player. So basically it's Howling Mine and an Underworld Dreams in 1. But ironically, there's no Howling Mine or Underworld Dreams in the deck. Now, like I said, I didn't design this deck, a friend of mine did. And yeah, it's a really awesome deck. Let's take a look at the card draw first, because with this deck you want opponents to draw cards. First of all, obviously we have Wheel of Fortune. All players must discard their hand and draw 7 new cards. Only 3 mana. We have a Time Reversal. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library, then draws 7 cards, exile Time Reversal. We have a Time Spiral, 6 mana, remove Time Spiral from the game. Each player shuffles his or her graveyard and hand into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. You untap up to 6 lands, so you can do more stuff later. Alright, we have a Spiteful Visions. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws a card. Whenever a player draws a card, Spiteful Visions deals 1 damage to that player. Now this is kind of tricky, because you should be careful not to play this when you draw a lot of cards yourself. Just be careful with this one, because Nekusar tells each opponent to lose a life, to deal 1 damage. Then we have a Molten Psyche. I really love this card. This is a great card. Each player shuffles the cards from his or her hand into his or her library, then draws that many cards. Metalcraft. If you control 3 or more artifacts, and you can easily do that with this deck. Molten Psyche deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards that player has drawn this turn. So basically with Nekusar in play and you only play this card, double the damage for each card drawn. Then we have our first artifact, Anvil of Bogarden. Each player skips his or her discard phase. During each player's draw phase, that player draws an additional card and then chooses and discards a card. So basically a Howling Mine with a discard to it. And you have no hand size anymore. Next up, Jace's Archivist. It's a creature, 2/2. And for only 1 blue and tap it, each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So you ideally want this to happen at 7. Memory Jar, of course, another artifact for 5 mana. You can sacrifice it and each player exiles cards from his or her hand face down and draws 7 cards. There goes another 7 life if you have Nekusar in play. At the beginning of the next end step, each player discards his or her hand and returns to his or her hand each card he or she exiled this way. So basically you just set aside your hand, draw 7 cards, and at the end of the turn discard those cards and take your old hand back. And we have a Windfall. It's a sorcery, 3 mana. Each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of a player discarded this way. Nice. We have Reforged the Soul. It is Miracle for 2. Basically, it's a Wheel of Fortune for 5, or for 2 if you miracle it. Then we have Winds of Change. I love playing this card in Commander. I have told you guys in the other decks I have played with red. Winds of Change is basically in every deck I play in red. And it's only 1 mana. You can play it on your very first turn. If you start the game, each player counts the cards in his or her hand, shuffle those cards back into his or her deck, and draws that many cards. Yes, you can screw up your opponent's game plan. Then we have a Temple Bell. For 3 mana it's an artifact, and if you tap it, each player draws a card. And then we have Dictate of Krufix. It has Flash, 3 mana. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. And finally, we have Whispering Madness. You can either cipher it, or each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. Nice. So that's it for the card draw cards. Let's put them all on a pile over here. Now then, what can we do to draw more cards? Of course, we have Jace Beleren, which we will mainly use for his +2 ability. Or -1 if you can kill off an opponent and you only want one opponent to be killed off. Then we have some more cards that work in the advantage, like Fate Unraveler. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Fate Unraveler deals 1 damage to that player. So basically it's a second Nekusar effect. And we have a Psychosis Crawler, which is beneficial if you draw a lot of cards, because it remains great. It has power and toughness equal to the number of cards in your hand. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. Now then, we have some other stuff here to look at. We have Liliana's Caress. Whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. Waste Not. Whenever an opponent discards a card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card... whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a zombie. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add 2 black to your mana pool. Whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, draw a card. And we have a Bloodchief Ascension. It's an enchantment for only 1 mana. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, which is totally doable, put a quest counter on Bloodchief Ascension. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Bloodchief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. Right, so we want to protect Nekusar at any cost with Lightning Greaves, quick and efficient. You don't need to target it anyway, so... Oh wait, I forgot one card that works with card draw. Whenever a player draws a card, the player loses 2 life unless he or she pays 2. Be careful with this one as well, because you can hurt yourself more than you wish. Played one game where I was too careless, drew a bunch of cards and quickly lost a lot of life. So, what do you want? You want to recur those items yet again. So we have a Snapcaster Mage for only 2. It's Flash. Well, who doesn't know Snapcaster Mage? It's a 2/1 creature, and whenever it enters the battlefield, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana costs. And we have a Mizzix Mastery for 4 mana. It's a sorcery. Exile target card that's an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, copy it. And you may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. Exile Mizzix Mastery. And you can overload it for 8. And you can change the word target to each. So exile each card that's an instant or sorcery this way. And then for each card, exile it, copy it. And so every card you exile from your graveyard gets a copy. And that's pretty good if you have a lot of those card draw stuff. You can quickly end the game with this one. Now then, to ensure we get more out of our turn, we get another turn with Time Warp. Take an extra turn. That's the only time card that he put in here. Which is perfectly doable because our play group doesn't allow more than 1 extra turn per game. So, okay, here we have Limdul's Vault. It's an instant for only 2 mana. It's a great card. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. As many times as you choose, you may pay 1 life to put those cards on the bottom of your library and look at the top 5 cards of your library. Shuffle all but the top 5 cards of your library, then put those cards on top of your library in any order. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. Yes, that's the old wording. Well, basically you look at the top 5 cards, you're not satisfied, you pay 1 life, put those on the bottom, do it all again until you are satisfied, and then you rearrange those cards, shuffle the rest, and put those 5 on top. Right, what else do we have? We have some bounce going on. Of course, Cyclonic Rift, which is basically a staple in blue, for 2 mana, or Overload 7, and you can change target to each again. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Yeah. Sweet. And we have Coastal Breach, 7 mana, it's Undaunted, so this spell costs 1 less to cast for each opponent. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Now we have a little bit of card draw ourselves, just for us. We have a Preordain, scry 2, then draw a card. We have an Impulse, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library, shuffle it afterwards. We have a Brainstorm, draw 3 cards, then take 2 of those to your hand and put them on top of your library. Brainstorm, everyone knows Brainstorm. Also a staple in a lot of blue decks. Ponder. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order. You may shuffle your library. Draw a card. Then we also have some ways to protect our investments. Of course, with counters. We have a counter spell. Easy. We have an Arcane Denial, counter target spell. That spell's caster may draw up to 2 cards at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. And you may draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Great card. Of course, we have our Force of Will. Counters for free. If you pay 1 life and remove a blue card from your hand. And we have the Pact of Negation. Also 0 mana, counter target spell. But at the beginning of your next upkeep, you must pay 5. If you don't, you lose the game. When I played this card, my opponent was really, really anxious for me to forget it. But I didn't. And he was like, oh man, I hoped you forgot it and lost the game and such. Right, what else do we have? We have Niv Mizzet, the Fire Mind. Flying. Whenever you draw a card, Niv Mizzet deals 1 damage to target creature or player. That's excellent, because with a Wheel of Fortune you draw cards as well. So it's a 7 free damage to someone. And if you tap it, you draw a card. Then we have some copy cards. We have a good old Phyrexian Metamorph. It's enters the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact, in addition to its other types. Then we have the Clever Impersonator. You may have Clever Impersonator enter the battlefield as a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield. Remember, it's not just a creature, any non-land permanent, so that's really cool. And Sakashima the Imposter. As Sakashima comes into play, you may choose a creature in play. If you do, Sakashima comes into play as a copy of that creature, except its name is still Sakashima. So you can make a copy of Nekusar, and it's still Sakashima, with a Nekusar ability. Oh, wow, the possibilities. It's still legendary, and it gains, for 4 mana, return Sakashima to its owner's hand at the end of turn. Great. Then we have some tutors. Of course, we have the original tutor, Demonic Tutor. Search your library for 1 card, take it to your hand. Only 2 mana. We have Vampiric Tutor for 1 mana. Search your library for a card, put it on top, you lose 2 life. In the same spirits, Mystical Tutor. Search your library for an instant, interrupt, mana source or sorcery card. Of course, an interrupt and a mana source don't exist anymore. They are currently instants in today's rulebook. So basically an instant or sorcery, reveal it, put it on top as well. And we have a Personal Tutor. Search your deck for a sorcery card, just a sorcery. Shuffle your deck, put it on top. Then we have some removal, because you don't want to rely on bounce or such things. So we have some spot removal. Terminate. Destroy target creature, can't be regenerated. And we have a Chaos Warp. Basically, it's some sort of removal as well, but it's a bit of a gamble. Because you choose permanent, the opponent shuffles it, or the owner, shuffles it back into his or her library, reveals the top card. If it's a permanent card, it's put onto the battlefield instantly. I have seen cases where someone shuffles a threat back into the deck and reveals an Ulamog or a Kozilek. That's really not how you want things to go. And for some more efficient stuff, we have a Damnation. Destroy all creatures that can be regenerated for 4 mana. This is a special promo card. It was a player reward card back in 2007 and 8. This card was given to players who played at a regular base. I remember getting that one in the mail, along with Wrath of God, Day of Judgment, etc., etc. And Blasphemous Act. Also an effective board wipe. So Blasphemous Act costs 9 mana, or it costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield, and it deals 13 damage to each creature. Excellent. Right, so now we only have some mana fix. In the form of artifacts, of course, we have the Chromatic Lantern, which is basically every land can make any color, and this taps for any color. Right, then we have Grim Monolith. It doesn't untap during your untap step, and if you tap it, you add 3. Oh, it costs 2, by the way. And for 4, you can untap it. We have a Soul Ring. Nice and simple. 1 mana tap for 2. Then we have 2 of the old Mirrodin Talismans. We have the black and red one. And a Talisman, it's only 2 mana artifact. You can tap it for colorless or either of the colors and take 1 damage. And we have Talisman of Dominance, blue and black, same principle. Then we have the Coalition Relic, 3 mana. If you tap it, you gain 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, or you can choose to tap it and put a charge counter on Coalition Relic. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, remove all charge counters from Coalition Relic. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool for each counter removed this way. Then, of course, we have a Mana Vault. Doesn't untap either, and if it remains untapped during your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to you. But for 4 mana, you can untap it, and you can use it only during your upkeep. It's only 1 mana, and if you tap it, you gain 3 mana of colorless mana. We have a Mind Stone. 2 mana, tap for 1, or 1 and discard, and sacrifice, draw a card. We have a Mana Crypt, or a Crypte de Mana, as this French version says. It's only 0 mana, and during your upkeep you must flip a coin. If it's, heads or tails, depending on what you choose, you gain 3 damage or none. And if you tap it, you tap it for 2 colorless mana. Great card. Then of course we have the Ravnica Signets, the Dimir Signets. 2 mana, for 1 mana you can tap it for 2, in this case blue and black. We have the Ragnos Signet, black and red. And of course we have the Izzet Signet, blue and red. Then we go to the old Moxes. We have a Mox Diamond, 0 mana when it comes into play. Choose and discard a card, or sacrifice Mox Diamond, tap it for any color. Of course, we have a Crow Mox, 0 mana Imprint. When it comes into play, remove a non-artifact, non-land creature in your hand from the game. Tap it to make mana of the imprinted card's color. And we have a Mox Opal, 0 mana Metalcraft. Add 1 mana of any mana to your color to your mana pool. Activate it only if you have 3 or more artifacts, which, as you can see, can be quite easy. All right, finally, the land base. Let's start off with the basic lands. We have 2 mountains, 2 swamps, and 5 islands. All right. Then we have some fetch lands. We have the Flooded Strands, fetches for an island or plains. Marsh Flats, searches for a swamp and a plains. Misty Rainforest for a forest or an island in this case. Polluted Delta, a swamp and an island. Bloodstained Mire, swamp and a mountain. And of course a Scalding Tarn, an island and a mountain. And you can search all kind of things with that, except for the Basic lands, of course. You can search for much, much more. You can search for the original Badlands, which is a mountain and a swamp. Or you can search for the Ravnica Shocklands, Watery Grave, black and blue. But it comes into play, you may pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters tapped. Same goes for Blood Crypt, the black and red Shocklands. And of course, Steam Vents, blue and red. Whoa. Then of course we have more... No, wait, we don't have more choices for those kind of things, for those lands. But we have some old pain lands. The Sheevan Reef, for example. Blue and red, and if you tap it for one of those colors, you gain 1... it deals 1 damage to you. Yeah. Or you can tap it for colorless. Underground River, taps for black and red, deals 1 damage. Or colorless and none damage. And of course Sulphur Springs, red and black. 1 damage. Right, we have some colorless... Oh, wait. Before we go to the colorless lands, we have more of the colored lands. But these are the Shadowmoor lands. We have Sunken Ruins. Taps either for colorless or you can pay a hybrid of black and blue. Tap it and add 2 in any combination. Same goes for Cascade Bluffs, but with blue and red. And of course, Graven Cairns, which was the only card of the cycle in Future Sight. Fun fact. It's the same, but for black and red. Right. Now we go to the colorless lands. We have an Ancient Tomb, which taps for 2 colorless mana and it deals 2 damage to you. Then we have Reliquary Tower, taps for colorless, and you have no maximum hand size. Very handy, if you ask me. Mikokoro taps for 1 colorless, and for 2, each player draws a card. Nice. Gaia Reach Sanitarium taps for colorless, and for 2, each player draws a card and discards a card. And of course we have Desolate Lighthouse, taps for colorless, and for 3 mana draw a card and discard a card. Right, then we have some cards that can make every single color. Exotic Orchard, it makes mana of any color that an opponent could produce. Forbidden Orchard makes any color, and whenever you tap it for mana, an opponent, target opponent creates a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. Command Tower makes 1 mana of the commander's color identity. Reflecting Pool makes mana of which a color you can produce. We're almost there. 2 cards left. We have Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. Each land is a swamp in addition to its own to its other land type, so this is basically also a swamp. You can tap it for black. You can tap everything for black now. And we have a Maze of Ith, which makes it a swamp as well if you have Urborg. Maze of Ith, awesome card. Target attacking creature becomes untapped. This creature neither deals nor receives damage as a result of combat. So, yeah, you can basically stop something that comes your way. Alright, so this is it for Nekusar. I really, really love this deck. It's a great deck. Like I said, a player of mine designed it. And he won the tournament with this deck. So, thank you all for watching. Next week we will be looking at Norin the Wary. Yes, also a very nice deck. So see you all then. Bye bye.